Think about any building you've ever seen going up. It's easy to just see the visible stuff, cranes, workers, the structure itself.
Yeah, physical activity.
Exactly. But really, every single project is driven by a contract, a detailed list of what needs to get done. So the big question is, how does a contractor actually make sure all those bits, schedule, budget, quality is? How do they make sure it all lines up?
That really is the core question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what we're digging into today. Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to unpack the absolutely essential role the contractor plays during the actual construction phase.
Right.
We'll be using our resources here to shine a light on those critical administrative procedures, the things that, really underpin a successful build.
Exactly. And for you, our listener, this is really about getting a clear picture of those crucial behind-the-scenes processes, the stuff that keeps a really complex project actually moving forward. We're looking at, well, everything from the contract documents themselves to industry standards and just the practical side of managing this huge, multifaceted operation.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts.
Our mission today, pretty simple. Highlight the contractor's admin procedures and show why they're just fundamental to getting the project done right.
Okay, let's dive in then. So the contractor's main job, their primary responsibility, is the physical completion, getting the project built.
Right, the actual building part.
Yeah, built safely, on schedule, within the budget agreed upon, and hitting the required quality standards. You can almost think of them as the conductor, for the whole orchestra on site.
That's a good analogy, but it's so important to remember, even though the contractor's leading the charge, they're definitely not working alone.
Oh, absolutely not. Construction is fundamentally a team sport.
Yeah.
You've got the owner, obviously, who wants the building, the designer or architect who envisioned it.
And then the whole network.
Exactly. Subcontractors doing specific trades, material suppliers bringing the stuff, quality control agencies checking things. Everyone has a part to play.
That's a crowd.
It really is. And what's interesting, too, is how these roles, these responsibilities, they can shift a bit depending on how the project is set up, the delivery method,
Like design, bid, build versus design, build.
Precisely.
Yeah.
In a traditional design bid build, it's more sequential. Designer designs, contractors bid, one build. In design build, the contractor and designer are teamed up much earlier, more collaboratively.
Okay.
And even the type of contract form used matters. Like you have standard forms for the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, which some feel put a lot of the onus on the contractor. Then there are others like consensus docs that try to spread the risk more collaboratively. All these things shape who's responsible for what.
Makes sense. So the role isn't totally fixed, but let's talk core functions. What are the key things a contractor typically handles during construction?
Well, it's a pretty long list. And like we said, it can vary. A small office renovation is different from a giant hospital, right?
Right. Different scale, different needs.
And the contract itself will spell out specifics,
Yeah.
but generally. The contractor figures out how to build it, the means, methods, the sequence of work. They oversee and coordinate all the physical work, their own crews, the subcontractors, everyone.
So managing the actual building process day to day?
Yep. And paying for labor, paying for materials. They're the ones hiring and managing all those subcontractors, too.
That's already a huge chunk of responsibility. What else?
Well, they handle submitting payment requests, getting paid as work progresses. They create and constantly update the construction schedule that's vital.
Keeping everything on track time-wise.
Exactly. Coordinating tests and inspections for quality control and code compliance. They usually get the main permits, like the building permit. Depending on the deal, they might manage insurance, bonding.
The financial security stuff.
Right, providing warranties for their work and materials. And, super important, keeping the job site safe and clean, fixing any work that gets rejected. And, what we're focusing on, coordinating all those administrative procedures.
Ah, the paperwork trail?
Kind of, yeah. But it's more than just paper. It's managing information. And finally, they're always tracking and trying to control time, cost, and quality. Plus, constantly managing those subs.
Okay, that is a lot. And like you said, we're zeroing in on those administrative procedures today, how they tie into controlling everything else, time, cost, quality, subs. So let's start with why. Why are these admin procedures so critical?
Okay, so even on a project that seems pretty simple, the amount of information flying around is, well, it's significant. Think about meeting minutes, memos, emails, questions back and forth, RFIs, change orders, daily logs. It adds up fast.
I can imagine. Just a flood of information.
Totally. So the contractor absolutely needs to set up clear, effective ways to manage that flow. That means deciding what gets recorded, what format to use, and who needs to get what information and how.
Like building the project's nervous system, making sure information gets where it needs to go.
That's a great way to put it. And having these solid record-keeping and communication systems is vital for, well, several big reasons. First, good documentation just cuts down on misunderstandings. Simple as that.
Right. If it's written down clearly, fewer arguments later.
Exactly. Everyone's on the same page, hopefully.
Yeah.
Second, it gives the contractor management tools to track progress, see how subcontractors are performing, spot potential problems early.
So they can actually manage effectively.
Yes. And if there are delays or issues, having accurate records is essential to figure out why and what to do about it. It can even support things like back charges.
Back charges, explain that a bit.
Sure. So say a subcontractor installs something wrong or doesn't meet the schedule, and the general contractor, GC, has to spend extra time or money fixing it or working around it. The GC might then back charge the subcontractor for those costs. Having clear documentation like daily reports showing the sub wasn't staffed properly or photos of the incorrect work is crucial evidence for that.
Gotcha. So it protects the GC financially if a sub messes up.
Precisely. And that leads to the third point, risk management. Good documentation is a massive risk mitigator. If things really go south and end up in a dispute, or even court.
The records are your evidence.
Absolutely. Detailed, accurate records show what actually happened. Honestly, good documentation can even help prevent disputes in the first place by making expectations clear and providing facts to resolve disagreements early.
Makes total sense. So, okay, if good documentation is so important, what makes documentation good? Are there rules of thumb?
Yeah, there definitely are. Some key principles. First, it needs to be retrievable, accessible. People need to be able to find it easily.
Which usually means electronic these days, right?
Almost always, yeah. Makes searching and sharing much simpler. Second, it has to be objective, accurate, complete, and timely. Think about meeting minutes if they aren't accurate, or they come out 3 weeks late.
They lose a lot of value. People forget the details.
Exactly. Timeliness is key. Third, distribution. The information have to get to the right people. If the architect changes a detail on a drawing, you need to make sure the specific subcontractor doing that work actually gets the updated information, not just the project manager.
Good point. Information silos are bad.
Very bad. And finally, standardization helps a lot. Using consistent forms and formats for things like change orders, RFIs, daily reports, it just makes everything clearer and more efficient. Imagine if every change order looked different. Chaos.
Yeah, using standard forms like maybe those AIA documents helps everyone know what to expect.
Right. Consistency is key for efficiency. Now remember, the amount and type of documentation will vary. A big public works project, tons of regulatory paperwork.
Right, accountability to taxpayers.
Exactly. Or if you're going for, say, a DLE green building certification, you'll have extra very specific documentation needs for tracking materials, waste, energy performance, often flowing down to subs and suppliers too.
So it's tailored, but some core documents are pretty universal.
Absolutely. While we can't list every possible piece of paper or digital file, there are 3 types that are fundamental to pretty much any construction project.
Okay, what are they?
Daily job reports, submittal tracking logs, and meeting minutes. And like we said, these are increasingly managed electronically.
All right, let's take those one by one. Daily job reports, sometimes called construction reports or daily journals.
Yeah.
What's their main job?
Think of them as that site diary we mentioned. Usually it's the contractor's superintendent filling one out at the end of every single workday. Could be on a standard paper form, but more and more it's done digitally on a tablet or laptop right there on site.
And the purpose?
Multiple purposes, actually. They track daily progress, what got done. They document site conditions, whether any unusual events. They provide backup for potential back charges or claims like we discussed. And they build up a really valuable historical record of how the project went.
So it's like the project's daily pulse check.
Exactly. What might seem like just routine paperwork is actually your first line of defense if there's a dispute about delays or site conditions later on. Detailed logs turn guesswork into solid info.
Okay, so what specific info usually goes into these daily reports?
Several key things. Usually the number and types of workers on site, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, etc., and what they were working on. That's super useful for tracking if subcontractors have enough people there, tracking progress.
Right, monitoring manpower.
Yep. Also, a daily weather summary, temperature, rain, wind. This can be critical later if there's a claim about weather delays or if certain materials have weather restrictions for installation, like some types of concrete or roofing.
Makes sense. What else?
Any rental equipment on site, cranes, lifts, pumps, helps verify when things arrived, when they left. Material deliveries are logged too, often checked against purchase orders. Any visitors or inspectors on site get noted. And critically, any problems, accidents, injuries, or other significant events are documented right away.
So a real snapshot of everything happening that day. Who sees these reports typically?
Well, they definitely go to the contractor's own project manager. They use them to stay up to date. Depending on the project and the contract, the owner or the architects might also get copies.
Okay.
And whether they're digital or paper, they're usually filed chronologically, so you can easily look back at a specific day or week. And yeah, there are lots of formats them into big software suites, custom templates contractors make, downloadable forms, lots of options.
Got it. Okay, next up, submittal tracking logs. Sounds very administrative. What's the deal there?
It sounds dry, but it's incredibly important. These logs track the flow of information and products that need approval before they can be used on the project. Think samples, shop drawings, product data sheets.
Stuff the contractor needs to submit for review.
Exactly. The log tracks the whole life cycle, when it was submitted, who reviewed it, when it was approved or rejected. It's a critical management tool, usually handled by the contractor's project engineer or field engineer.
Why is tracking this stuff in such detail so vital?
Because most of the time, the contractor literally cannot order or install certain materials or products until the architect signs off on the submittal for it. Any delay in that approval process can cause a ripple effect and delay the whole project schedule.
Ah, okay. So it's directly tied to procurement and progress.
Absolutely. Let's clarify what a submittal even is. Before construction starts, things like insurance certificates or lists of subcontractors are technically submittals. But during construction, it's mostly about product info, physical samples, or detailed drawings, things that prove the contractor is planning to use materials and methods that meet the contract requirements.
Okay, so what kinds of things need a submittal?
Oh, lots of things. Anything custom fabricated like structural steel pieces, special millwork, HVAC ductwork that needs detailed shop drawings.
Drawings made by the fabricator, not the architect.
Correct. Also, even standard, off-the-shelf items often need product data, submitted spec sheets for lights, doors, pumps, roofing membranes, you name it. And sometimes, for really critical visual or functional elements, like a section of the exterior wall, or complex flashing details, they might need to build a physical mock-up as a submittal for review.
Wow, a full-scale sample.
Sometimes, yeah. The project specifications, the written part of the contract documents, will list out exactly what requires a submittal. And like I said, usually you can't start making it or installing it until that submittal gets the green light from the architect. Delays here. Big problem for the schedule. Managing this flow is key.
Okay, so there are different categories. You mentioned shop drawings, product data. What else?
Samples are the third main type.
Right, let's break those down. Shop drawings first for the custom stuff.
Exactly. Anything that isn't just pulled off a shelf needs shop drawings. These are highly detailed drawings made by the manufacturer or subcontractor, showing exactly how they plan to make the item dimensions, materials, connections, finishes, everything. Custom cabinets, structural steel connections, metal ductwork, maybe roof trusses, things engineered or fabricated for this specific project. Now, when the sub makes the drawing, the contractor reviews it first.
The GC checks it before it even goes to the architect.
Yes, absolutely. The GC has to check, does it match the architect's drawings and specs? Are the dimensions right? Will it physically fit where it's supposed to go? Does it connect properly to other parts of the work? Only after the GC is satisfied and stamps it approved or reviewed does it go to the architect.
And what does the architect check?
The architect reviews it mainly for design intent. Does it meet the overall look and function they designed? They might also send it to their consultant's structural engineer, mechanical engineer for their specific input.
Okay.
And critically, nothing gets built or ordered until the architect sends that drawing back, hopefully approved.
Got it. Okay, so shop drawings, custom items. What about product data?
Product data is basically the manufacturer's info for standard products. Brochures, spec sheets, performance charts, installation guides.
Like for a specific model of boiler or a type of window.
Exactly. The supplier usually gives this data to the contractor, who submits it. It tells the architect everything about the product model number, technical specs, warranty info, finishes available, sometimes even maintenance needs. It proves the proposed product meets the specs.
Okay. And the third type was samples. Seems straightforward.
It mostly is. For things where color, texture, or finish is important, you need physical samples. Carpet squares, tile samples, paint color drawdowns, maybe a sample of a light fixture finish.
So the architect can see and feel the actual material.
Right. The sub or supplier gives it to the GC. The GC verifies it's what was specified, then sends it to the architect for the final aesthetic approval.
So with all these shop drawings, product data sheets, samples flying around, how does the contractor keep it all straight? That's where the log comes in.
That's exactly where the submittal tracking log comes in. It's a master list. It tracks every single required submittal, what it is, when it's due, when the contractor actually sent it to the architect, when the architect responded, what their response was: approved, rejected, revise, and resubmit, and the date of that final action.
So it's the central nervous system for approvals.
Perfectly put. You can see the status of everything.
Yeah.
And these logs, again, could be spreadsheets, custom databases, or part of a bigger project management software system. There are different ways to do it, but you have to do it.
And what happens after the architect reviews the submittal?
Okay, so the architect reviews it, stamps it somehow, approved as noted, revise and resubmit, rejected, and sends it back. The log gets updated if the architect made changes or notes.
Like, use thicker metal here, or this color isn't quite right.
Exactly. That might trigger a change order discussion if it impacts cost or time. But once it's fully approved, that info goes back to whoever originated the supplier, and then they can finally make the thing or order the material.
Okay, that really clarifies how submittals work and why tracking them is so critical for keeping the project moving. Now, the third key document type, meeting minutes. We all kind of know what minutes are, but how are they used specifically in construction management?
Right. In construction, meeting minutes are the formal, written record of what was discussed and decided in project meetings. The main goal. Document decisions, actions, who's responsible for what, and key info shared. This really helps cut down on misunderstandings later.
He said, she said doesn't work well on a job site.
Definitely not. And you have lots of formal meetings on a project. So creating accurate minutes and crucially distributing them to everyone involved is absolutely essential. They need to be saved as part of the project record.
Sounds like it's all about accountability and keeping everyone aligned.
That's the core of it. And usually there are established communication protocols, like formal communication between the contractor and the owner often goes through the architect.
The architect is like the central hub.
Often, yes. Similarly, if a sub needs to formally communicate with the architect, it usually goes through the GC. Same for consultants, like engineers talking to the contractor, usually routed via the architect. It helps the GC maintain overall coordination and ensures everything important gets recorded.
Okay. So what kinds of meetings typically require these formal minutes?
Two big ones are the regular progress meetings, often monthly, between the contractor and the architect, and then more frequent coordination meetings the contractor holds with their subcontractors.
Tell me about the progress meetings first.
Okay, those usually happen monthly, often tied to the contractor submitting their bill for payment. Attendees might include the contractor's team, the architect's team, the owner, maybe reps from key subs, sometimes even people from the bank or surety company.
So the major players, what do they discuss?
Big picture stuff mostly. Overall progress compared to the schedule, any proposed or approved changes, any delays or problems that have come up, and what actions are being taken to address them.
Okay. And the contractor-subcontractor meetings?
Those are usually more frequent, maybe weekly, sometimes even daily, for specific tasks. They can involve all the main subs, or just the ones working on a particular part of the project. Attendees are typically the GC's project manager, superintendent, maybe a foreman, and reps from the subcontractors involved. It's more about detailed coordination of the work happening soon.
And the GC runs these meetings and makes sure minutes are taken?
Yes. The GC usually facilitates, sets the agenda, keeps things on track. And critically, they're responsible for making sure someone takes clear, accurate minutes and that those get distributed promptly. That record is key.
So what information is typically in meeting minutes?
Standard stuff, mostly. Date, time, location. Title of the meeting like OAC Progress Meeting, #12, or Weekly MEP Coordination. A list of who attended and who gets a copy, who prepared the minutes.
The basic.
Right. Then the meat of it is usually broken down. Often a section for new business issues discussed, decisions made, and action items assigned, clearly stating who is responsible and when it needs to be done by. And then usually an old business or unfinished businesses section to review the status of action items from previous meetings.
So you can track if things are actually getting done.
Exactly. You can use software templates for this or just create them in-house. A really useful trick is numbering the items consistently.
Like an item might be 31, meaning it came from meeting #30, first item discussed. Then in the next meeting's old business, you refer back to 30-1. It helps track the history of issues, delays, and potential cost impacts.
That sounds incredibly useful for staying organized when there's so many moving parts. So tying it all together, these daily reports, the submittal logs, the meeting minutes, they all feed into the contractor's ability to manage the project effectively.
Absolutely. They form the administrative backbone. This framework of information allows the contractor to do their main job, deliver that project safely, on time, on budget, and meeting the quality standards set out in the contract. And, importantly, this detailed record keeping provides the essential data they need for the next critical step, which is actively monitoring progress, which we'll probably get into next time.
Okay. So wrapping up this part, the big takeaway is that the contractor's job is way more than just, swinging hammers or pouring concrete.
Much more.
It's deeply involved with managing information through meticulous documentation and really clear, consistent communication. These admin procedures might seem like background noise.
Yeah, the boring stuff sometimes.
Right. But they are absolutely vital. They're what keeps a complex project on the rails and guides it towards a successful finish. Understanding this is really key for anyone touching the construction industry, whether you're in it or just observing.
And that brings up a final thought for you, our listener, to consider. Think about how easily things could go wrong if there's a breakdown in this communication or documentation. What seemingly small administrative task may be missing a daily report entry or delaying a submittal approval? What small thing do you think could potentially snowball into major problems, causing significant delays or cost overruns on a project? Something to think about.